Mad Max. It is a game that is really grand in scope. I mean, the size is huge. The amount of time that it will take you to beat it is really long. But sadly, it's a game that's a little shallow in gameplay mechanics. And it's not the most polished game in the world. That being said, it is fun. Whether it's worth your time or not, well, that depends on if you're into this kind of thing. For me, one of the big reasons that I got it was that I love getting games that I can really get my money's worth. And I knew from other reviews that I could play this for a long time. And of course, after watching the Mad Max movie, that made me a little more interested in it. And the setting and things, I was interested in. I was also, a little interested in having an open world game where your transportation and upgrading it and things plays such a huge part. Not really comparable, but in Red Dead Redemption, I really enjoyed getting new horses. I had a connection with some of those that I found, and I had to rope and tame. And you do get a connection to your car here. Not as much as you'd want, and not as much as they try to make you have, perhaps, but you do have one. It is your lifeline, it's your transportation, and it's a huge part of the story. It's kind of the focus of the story. But let's get a bit into the gameplay, some of the good and bad points here. The story is bare bones thin. I'm not going to spoil too much here. You are trying to get a car so that you can go to the Plains of Silence. And you already have a car in the beginning. This basically means you have to get a car that's good enough to go to the Plains of Silence. And Max, for some reason, believes that he needs a V8 for that purpose. So, by far, the majority of the story is simply you trying to get a V8 engine. And that's it. You do meet a few characters along the way. They are completely unremarkable. Everyone in this world is just kind of an ass. Which I guess is keeping with the movies. But you don't really get a connection to anyone, even your mechanic who's with you the entire game. You never really feel much of a connection with anyone. You don't really like anyone. You don't even like Max all that much. You feel a little sympathy for him. But he's not a likable guy. So story-wise, I'm gonna have to say this game fails. Gameplay-wise, it's fun but shallow. I think they tried to spread themselves a little too thin. The combat follows, a Batman style counter system. It's been used a lot recently. It's been used in Shadow of Mordor, another Warner Brothers game. But I think it's been done better in those games, especially in Shadow of Mordor, where you can really upgrade your skills. Yes, you can upgrade them here, but it feels inconsequential. Every time you do an upgrade, you don't really feel that it's really doing all that much. It's not that fun to do. It's not that interesting. And the combat, while enjoyable, does get a little old pretty quick. And they try to spread that out, and I think they do it too thin with car combat as well. And the car combat, the first few times you do it, it's fun, and it seems fast-paced, and it's pretty cool. You can use a shotgun or a harpoon, and later on you can get a thunderpoon, which is basically a missile, which is a really overpowered thing. But they take too long, and no matter how much you upgrade your car, when you try to take down caravans and things, groups of cars, it's pretty slow and it's pretty tedious, and you might have to sit there and stop completely and get your thing repaired, your car, and then catch back up with them and then continue. I don't think they did it all that well. It's kind of fun, but it's a little tedious, and I really feel like they could have done it better. Which is a disappointment, because that's half of the game. There are a lot of small little things to nitpick about, which, if it was just one or two, If they didn't happen that often, they would be forgivable, but there's a lot of small things that just build and drive you crazy. You pick up a weapon when you're in a stronghold, you have to put that weapon down all the time, or you accidentally drop it while trying to pick up scrap. Things like that. The game's just not as polished as it should be, with a lot of its mechanics. Button presses sometimes. Even the combat, while I said it's fun and it follows that style that we're all pretty much familiar with, and sometimes it's very responsive. However, in games like Shadow of Mordor or some others, if one person attacks and you get a parry off and you immediately see another one, you can just, as long as you hit the parry button in time, then you will go into another parry animation. This one, I don't know if sometimes that seems to work and sometimes it doesn't, and I don't know why. I don't see any difference in my timing when I do these. I just don't think that part was made all that well. It seems like sometimes they just don't allow you to leave the animation you're currently in, and sometimes they do. I don't know why, and I think that's poorly done. And another big thing about this game is, well, how big it is. The size is huge, and that feels great. The world feels big, but I think this game is actually a little too long. Another game I reviewed recently, very late, I know, was The Order 1886, where so many people complained about it being too short and it's just too quick. You don't get your money's worth. Well, this is a great example of why this argument is bullshit. Because that game was small, but polished to a T. The whole experience was well crafted. This is a fun game, but because it's not as well crafted, you feel like it goes too long. And it does. I don't know how many hours in I was, but probably only a quarter of the way into it, and I was already starting to feel a little tedium. By the time I got to the end, I just really wanted it to end. Often with open world games, I want to continue a little bit afterwards, since I've already spent all this time upgrading things, upgrading myself, my car, my weapons. I want to continue a little bit, but this, as soon as I quit, the credits rolled, I was done. I think I'm done with this world. And that's a little sad. But you do get your money's worth just beating, the main campaign. You might get a little too much, actually. So is this game worth it? It's hard to say. And of all the reviews I've done so far, this is probably one of the most difficult for me to either just recommend or say, leave it. I enjoyed it for most of the time that I played it. And I did get my money's worth, and I wanted something I could play a long time, and I definitely got that. I think you have to understand what you're getting into here. If you like open world games that are fun, but maybe a little shallow, but you're definitely going to be able to play a long time, then maybe pick it up. And on a quick side note, there are some moments in here, just like with a lot of big open world games, where some of the side missions are really good. And in this case, a couple of the side missions are really, really kind of creepy. I was amazed by how creeped out I was in what's essentially an action game. A couple of the side missions freaked me out more than I've been freaked out in any game in a long time. So it does have a few surprises up its sleeve. But if you want something like a shallow Shadow of Mordor where you drive a car around, then pick it up.